All right, Dr. Gordon, thank you for that and flexibility around that. All right, I'm gonna hand over to you. It's very important that that we get all the time in here to share. So I'm very happy that you can join us. And guys, oh, before Dr. Noel grace us with his wonderful voice, presenter's voice here. Those of us with questions, if you have a question, please drop it in the chat. If you want to raise your hand and we can unmute you to talk close to the end of the program. Okay, because we want to get as much meat out of it as possible. It's very practical. And for those of us who are on YouTube, you can drop your questions in the chat as well in YouTube, and we will get them answered as in a timely manner. Okay. All right. So over to you, Dr. Gordon, to take us away.
Thank you, Dr. Dice.
Yeah.
So today I'll be speaking to us on restorative practices in our classrooms, because the classroom is where the action takes place. As an educator, as a school administrator and district administrator for over 19 years, I'm one of those administrators who believe that the teachers in the classroom, they are the agents of change. They are the individuals who make the difference. And I believe that the teachers are the unsung heroes, but I believe that many of us as educational leaders understand that. And therefore we try to build capacity with our staff and show them the greatest respect and try to find resources that will help them to do their work better. I remember when I just started my career in education, I was a teacher in Paris, New Jersey. And when the students disrupted me, I did a number of things. I would call for the security officer. I would call for the principal. I would write their names on the chalkboard. We didn't have the smart boards at that time. Hey, I'm dating myself. So one day the principal refused to answer. And I asked him why. He said, every time you call me in, you are relinquishing your authority. You're giving that to me. And when I leave, then you won't be able to function. They go back to that bad behavior. And then I learned classroom management. I realized that I had to build confidence and trust in our students. I had to change my approach. I was that dogmatic, punitive teacher. But then I realized that if I built relationships with my students, then things would be better. And I was a very good disciplinarian, but at the same time, the students were able to relate to me. And since that time, and then I moved from being a teacher to a guidance counselor. And then I realized that communicating with students and having audience with students and teachers and try to resolve the matter would give us not just mechanical changes, but adaptive changes. You know, the mechanical change, you put a Band-Aid over it, and then the sore is still there, but the adaptive change, you go in and you do the surgery. And when I moved into administration, I would facilitate that kind of a discourse. And I remember I was in charge of peer mediation in one of the schools that I taught. I was a counselor in Paris, New Jersey. And I remember bringing someone into our school because we had such a tough group of students. It's one of our most challenging schools in that school district. And we brought in a lady, I remember her name was Carmela Potts. And she spent an entire month meeting with groups of students, and we changed the culture of the school. So having said that, I want to give a little background that I have the practical experience in this and it's workable. Now, I want to take us through a step-by-step implementation plan for educators and school leaders as far as restorative practice are concerned. I did a prior presentation on restorative justice and restorative practices, and all of that is on the website. Dr. Dice can share that with you later on. You can go in. So I'm not going to be laboring you with an exhaustive presentation on, you know, what restorative justice is. I'll just move through that part and basically share with you how we can get through it. My objective is really to create a classroom environment rooted in trust and accountability, community, and the expected outcomes to reduce behavioral issues and improve relationships. And if you notice, I haven't said anything here about academics. We spend so much time on response to intervention, the math and the English and the science. But if we take another approach, where we focus on the trust and the accountability and the community, the multi-tiered support services, which includes response to intervention, but it also includes dealing in the affect. So this is where we're really going with this. So these are my objectives. So as an introduction, let's imagine a school where conflicts are opportunities for growth and mistakes are chances to learn, and every member feels heard, understood, and valued. Just think about that. That's really utopia in education, but let's think about it. You have to aim for the skies and reach the clouds, right? So this vision rests upon the principles of restorative justice. Restorative justice is used in the prison system where they're trying to bend old men and old women who have been incarcerated. But I think there should be a reallocation of resources, and let's try to catch our children when they are at their most impressionable years, and let's equip our educators, provide them with the resources that they can truly change our students for the better. So restorative justice in a nutshell is a theory of justice that focuses on mediation and agreement rather than punishment. I know, I was a teacher. Sometimes we just want to get that kid out of that classroom, right? So we can teach the others. And I am empathetic. I do understand. But we talk about, Jim Collins talks about change, and we want to do the cultural change, and we all want to be on board. That's why I'm taking the time, and ESI is taking the time to see if we can make this a systemic activity so that we can at least look on discipline from another perspective. So the overarching goal of restorative practices or restorative justice is to develop a restorative justice framework fostering inclusion, responsibility, and accountability in our school setting. It's not that, hey, we're not going to give you a punishment so you're going to get off. No, there's a responsibility piece here. So restorative justice in classroom management, it seeks to create a culture of empathy, putting yourself in the place of the other person, putting yourself in the place of the student, a culture of understanding, a culture of healing, and a culture of accountability. And that's the essence. And there are 5 principles of restorative justice. And these principles, we teach them. These are practices that we are very intentional when we institute restorative practices, restorative justice in a classroom setting.
Dr. Gordon.
Hello?
Yes. Can you put it on full screen? Because we're seeing your intro slide still.
It's on full. I don't know what's happening. It's on full screen.
Oh, so yeah, come off and make sure that is flipping.
Let me go back here. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. I think what I'm going to have to do is to just click it this way. Can you see the changes now?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, I'll do it this way. I was on that view, but I don't know what was happening. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so that's what I just talked about. That's my introduction. And I'll move it along this way. Yeah. So I said that the overarching goal is to develop a restorative justice framework, fostering inclusion, responsibility, and accountability for our students. Now, restorative justice in classroom management seeks to create a culture of empathy, understanding, healing, and accountability. And as I said, it's not like the student is going to get off because of what he or she did, but these students are going to be held accountable, but in a different way. And these are the 5 principles that we try to inculcate in our students. 1, relationship, respect. We're seeing it now, right?
Yes.
Respect, responsibility, and it doesn't stop there. Repair and reintegration. When I served as director of guidance and counseling for one of the school districts that I worked in the United States here, I realized that students would go out on suspensions, and when they returned, they would go right back to their class and nothing would happen after that. The work doesn't stop there. We have to work on repair. So we try to encourage our counselors to meet with these students and provide several sessions where they will ask them questions. What do you do? What could you have done differently? What are you going to be doing going forward? And they monitor the student for a while. That's a repair. And then we reintegrate them into the classroom if it requires a meeting between the student and the teacher. Because trust me, You don't win a student by suspending a student, because they come back and they might not do the damage, but they will probably incite other students to do the damage and sit back and watch you squirm as the administrator or as a teacher. So as I said, the objective is rooted in accountability, trust, community, reduced behavioral issues, and improved relationship. So having said that, how do we institute restorative practices in our schools? I'm really hoping that we could make an effort to change our approach or to enhance what we are doing. Because if you notice, we still have prisons are being built, and lots of our students are getting into problems, and we still have crimes on the increase. And these are our students who are going out into the society. Some of them are creating havoc. What can we do differently that the product that we put out there? I'm not saying we are the ones who are causing this. It's just the environment and the society in which we live. But what can we do differently so that we can cut back? So we would like to see some prisons closed down, right? We'd like to see less crime in our countries, various countries. So basically, I think that if we're going to institute a system, it's not going to be a top-down system, because what I find in administration, and I've been in all the capacities from classroom teacher to administrator, many times we introduce a program and it's a top-down initiative. It's just placed on your plate and you should do this. But I realize that we need to operate in a top-down, bottom-up environment where the agents of change, the teachers, those in the classroom, they have a say, because it might be a good idea, but it's not just the selling, the telling, it's the telling and the selling of the idea. So if it could be placed on your plate and you take a look at it and you learn what it's about and you see what the virtues are, then you're more than likely as an educator be amenable to the idea. And an administrator will get less resistance if we take that approach in addressing the matter. So phase one would involve the buying process. Hey, we have this detention, 3 days of suspension, Saturday detention, punishment. How do we change this? Because it's really not working. We have repeat offenders all the time. How do we take what approach can we take to see how we can improve on this, to see how we can change the approach? We have to have the stakeholders buy-in. We have to present the benefits of restorative practice to the staff, as I'm doing now, to share research and success stories. In the presentation that I gave previously, which you'll be able to access online at ESI site, we shared some amazing research and success stories. They were actually incredible. But it's factual. If this is put into place, it will assist us. We have to host information sessions with questions and answers, and people are able to ask, what is this about? What can we do differently? How can this complement the whatever PBSIS approach that we have in our school district right now? Because you have positive behavior initiatives in your schools. This is not something that's going to take away from that. This is an initiative that will enhance whatever is already in place. So it's not like a new initiative to eliminate what is working. It's just here to enhance. So once we hold meetings and roundtables and focus groups, then the expected outcome would be for the leadership and staff to commit to restorative practices. We cannot get that commitment if we do not have professional development around buying, what's involved in the buying. And then once we do that, then we go to the needs assessment. What are our needs? Evaluate the current discipline practices, because I'm sure we keep records of how many students who have been suspended, how many fights we have, etc. So we take a look at what's current in our schools. Then we survey the teachers and we survey the students. You notice I'm always involving our teachers, because when you get into the classrooms, I haven't been in a classroom as a teacher for a long time. I enjoy visiting classroom as an administrator, but you are there with the students every day, and you're seeing things that we might not see from our offices. And we also need to hear from the students. We take a look at the student perspective. We have a tool up here that we use in the United States of America where students evaluate. I don't think that was put in place by educators, but they evaluate their teacher, and it's accessible to everybody and the grandmother. And sometimes the review that you get from students, it's bad. Sometimes it's good. But if we can come in a setting where it's not, fighting adversarial kind of setting, and we can have the conversation, what are your needs? What do you think is precipitating all these kinds of problems, all these kinds of issues? And then we identify behavioral challenges, identify what is precipitating these challenges, and then we can establish goals. So this is a needs assessment. So basically the output from the needs assessment is baseline data, because you know that you have to have your baseline data. If you're doing academics, you have to have the pre-test at the beginning of the semester, beginning of the term, to see where the students are. And then once you see where they are, then that will help you to inform instruction. This will help us to inform the strategies that we put in place for restorative justice and restorative practices. And then we have to select which restorative practice framework we will be using. I like the K-cell model. We have used that. I've used that in the past, where you really present to teachers and students certain skills that you need to inculcate, certain soft skills that will help you to navigate your space, because it is not just for teachers, for students, but it's also for students. I use the K-cell model. I know that ESI has developed curriculum around it, also an extensive curriculum, which I've looked at, or whatever models you want to use, social emotional learning model that is very important for us to determine. And that should be a democratic approach. Don't just impose something on the staff and say, this is the model we're going to use. You take a look at it, you dissect it, and you come to a conclusion. Hey, this is the model, or these are the frameworks that we're going to be using. And then you identify the professional development providers. I'm a person who believes in the train the trainer model. I've seen situations where we bring in these icons from the outside, and they come to our schools and they meet with us in the auditorium, and they gave this a wonderful presentation, and then they're gone, and you're left to hold the bag. But I believe that it's more economical if you identify your leaders or your trainers among you, and you say, hey, I want you guys to become proficient in this area of expertise, and you bring someone in and you train the trainers. So therefore your professional development ultimately will be co-facilitated by your own staff, and this builds trust among your peers. It's like in writing curriculum. When I served as curriculum director for my school district, they wanted to buy curriculum. I said, don't go buy any curriculum. Let your staff, those who are proficient and competent in various areas, let them sit and take a model and build the curriculum and get the resources that they need. Because if they build the curriculum around their needs, then guess what will happen? They will buy into it better than if you put something on their plate to do. So we will arrange for the professional development leaders to be trained in restorative practices, and we will allocate time and budget for this training. Training is absolutely important. So there's a training and resource plan that will be in place. Of course, it has to be fitted into the budget. The community has got to be involved in this, because if we bring parents and community leaders and business people in, and we let them know that, hey, we're trying to turn out better students who are more or better able to fit into society and live up to their civic responsibility, then they should be a part of this move. We're talking about a movement that we can introduce across the Caribbean, and in an effort to reduce the negative effect or impact of what's happening in society. So that's phase one. That will be you do your reconnaissance and you get in and you do your groundwork, you get your baseline data, and then you move to phase two now. Phase two would be capacity building. We're going to be building capacity. How do we get this done? How do we move ahead with this plan that we have in place? So it involves staff training, professional development, and one of the things that ESI will be offering is professional development. And, you know, we do surveys, we see what your needs are. We try to get the right individual to provide the training that is relevant, that is significant, because unless we shorten our saw, then we won't get the results that we need. So restorative practice workshop for all staff. And these are the modules that we are recommending. Restorative circles, you know, there are lots. If you go on the internet and you go to YouTube and you look at restorative circles, you'll see teachers and students coming together. Some of the toughest students, we have seen situations where the toughest students, if they have an opportunity to speak up, if they have an opportunity to express themselves, to state their point of view in a safe space, then they'll do it. One of the greatest human needs is to be heard and to be understood. And this is what comes out of restorative circles. If we have this institutionalized in our schools, where like you have a peer mediation program where students come together and talk about their problems, then we talk about affective statements, you know, the I statements, the feeling statements, using our words instead of using our hands. And we have to train students in doing this. Remember your words. I know we're doing that right now, but we will have specific terminologies that they can use and they can rehearse. We teach them to resolve conflicts, you know, the fight, the flight, and the resolve approach to conflict. Many people, even adults, are not able to resolve conflicts because we're waiting to state our points. But conflict resolution, it's not a win-lose situation. It's a win-win situation. Punishment is a win-lose situation. I'm not talking about consequences for your behavior. There will be consequences for your behavior. But guess what? We're going to make you be a part of that consequence. What do you think your consequence should be? And in many of the instances, when I met with students and have these conversations with them and try to resolve them in the restorative practice setting, the perpetrator, the aggressor, usually is very hard on himself or herself. They're usually hard on themselves. Okay, I think I should get 5 days of suspension because, of course, they now come to terms with what they did. And then we talk about harm repair conferences. And these are situations where you bring the students together, and it may even involve bringing the parents together and just have this collaborative approach in trying to make sure that it's a systemic change. And tomorrow, these same two kids are not going to go out and fight again, you know. And then we provide, I put that in bold, we provide the implementation tools. Whatever is needed, all the resources, whether it's books, whether it's access to online programs, whatever it is, then that is made available. And then once this is done, the staff is trained and the staff is equipped. And for the most part, the staff will not be resistant to the idea, to the initiative. And then let's take a look at now that the staff is trained. How do we get to the students, you know? So it would be a new language in your school. We talk about RP, restorative practices. It will be on the tip of the tongue of everybody. And this is the approach. We have t-shirts about it. We have posters on the walls about it. We talk about it in our assemblies. We hold sessions and assemblies, and we have little skits and, hey, let's solve our problems. Oh, let's resolve, let's not fight, you know, use visuals and student-friendly language. You know, you may even have the students come up with ideas and their own ideas, and it's now the selling. As I said, it's not just the telling, but it's the selling. And the output from this would be the students would understand restorative practice and the role that they play to make it successful. And it's really a selling. And that's the phase 2. And then we go to phase 3, which is the implementation, the initial implementation of restorative practices. And to do this, we would basically use effective statements with our students. Start your day with, I remember we did several systemic things in my experience in schools, like drop everything and read in the morning. And, they would have to drop everything, and that's the time for reading. I know in one of the schools that I supervise, every morning, the principal would engage the students in this course, and she would make a statement, and the students would respond to the statement, and just became a part of the culture of the school. So you would start to have a compendium of effective statements, and each teacher would have that, and they would pull that out in the mornings, and they would say these statements. They would have the students repeat these statements, and then they would incorporate in their instruction, their teaching and learning process, regular classroom circles. I remember when I was in high school, I went to Homewood Technical High School, and my math teacher was Mr. Wilson. And I don't remember the Pythagoras theorem that Mr. Wilson taught me. What I remember are those conversations unrelated to mathematics that he would engage us in as students and talk about life. Let me tell you, these soft skills, teaching these soft skills, we have to be intentional. It's part of our responsibilities as educators, not just to funnel the math and the English and the science, but we are framing the minds and the hearts of our next generation. So use effective statement. Let it become a part of the culture. Conduct regular classroom circles and emphasize proactive relationship building. What I find, and if we have any guidance counselors here with us, you would probably agree with me, because I've worked in guidance, my goodness, for the better part of the 29 years I spent in education. I worked in guidance for most of those years, either as a guidance counselor or supervising guidance department. I find that most of the work that we do is reactive work. Students are fighting, they come to our office. Students having issues, they come to our office, and we try to resolve it. But one of the things that restorative practices really encourage, or it's really about being proactive. Don't wait until the horse has gone through the gate. It's already gone. You have to chase it down. But if you can keep the gate closed and you can take care of things prior to the ultimate happening and prior to the worst happening, then that's what's important. So you would use the effective languages. Statements, conduct regular classroom circles, and emphasize proactive relationship building. And the output here is that restorative practice will be integrated into the daily routine. Again, we talk about cultural change. We have to do something differently. And I believe that this is the answer. We talk about a cultural change. And then we would facilitate what you call, or your school district, or your whatever you call it in your country, the groups of schools, they would use restorative practice to resolve conflicts. So instead of you going in front of the dean or the principal, and you did this, who was wrong? You're the perpetrator, you're the victim. Okay, you're going to go out in 3 days suspension. Maybe the ethics, the code of ethics for the school suggests that certain infractions require out of school suspension. I'm not saying to break those rules. I'm acutely aware of that. But in some of these situations, you can, instead of sending the student out, you engage them, send them to the individuals or the facilitators of restorative practice, and make sure that they resolve these conflicts. Because listen, we cannot allow our students to have negative reinforcement for their behaviors. Almost every student I know who is placed on suspension is saying hallelujah through those doors, hallelujah for the next 5 days, because you're going to be out for 5 days. So it's as if they're getting a reward, because the perpetrators are not necessarily the ones who enjoy going to class. So you send them home for 5 days, they enjoy that, but keep them there. In fact, you convert your suspension or your detention room into something fancy, life skill room, or life skill resort, or some very positive words of positive connotation to it. And you send them there to resolve their conflict. Then you conduct restorative conversations or conferences with your students. Remember, the staff is already trained, the language is already out there, they know what they're getting into, and then you include all parties involved. In one of the things that we have to do when we report to the Department of Education here in New Jersey, we have to report all the infractions, and we have to include the names of all the parties, whether you are the aggressor or you're the victim or you're the witness or the instigator. All the names have got to be involved. So when you bring these students together, the ones who incited everybody, you bring them and you have this conference where you seek to resolve. And here's the output. Here's the output. And here's a shift. It's a shift from a punitive to a restorative responses, from punitive to restorative responses. Is it easy? No, I'm not saying it's easy, because many students only know how to respond when you punish them. They want you to hit them, not hit them, not physically hit them. They want you to mete out the punishment to them. They're expecting to get the suspension. They're expecting to be yelled at. But that's something that we want to change. And that's phase 3. Then we move on to phase 4 now. Phase 4 would be monitoring and support. We have to provide that support, and the buy-in has got to come from all levels. Okay? And the administration has to ensure that it is taking place not just in one segment of the community, but that it is a language that has been advanced in all areas, in all grade levels, in all classrooms, because we want to make sure that we're sending the same message. Because when the last thing you want a student to say, hey, I did the same thing and now I'm suspended, but the other person was not placed on suspension, and then the parents get involved, etc. We all have to be on the same page. And that's one reason I said that parents have got to be involved in this process. So let's look at monitoring and support. Ongoing coaching. You assign restorative practice coordinators or mentors. And this is also a segue into administration. You find those teachers who, or want to the upward mobility to move into administration, to move into leadership. This is a good way to start your journey. When I was a teacher or a guidance counselor, I would pick up any responsibility that was given to me by my administrator. I wasn't running through a door at 3 p.m. or 2:30 or 2:55 as soon as school is over. I would be there to support, and they see the leadership within me. And then when it comes time to recommend for growth and for upward mobility, then I would be one of the persons. So we need to step up and be restorative practice coordinators or mentors, and you are the go-to persons. They may take a classroom session, one section from you, and instead of you teaching 10 classes, you teach 9 classes. I don't know it's set up in your country, but I know in the United States, you have a certain number of classes you have to teach. And sometimes instead of a lunch duty or whatever the case might be, you are placed into that position. And sometimes you might even be paid to do it, depending on how things are set up in your school, right? So we assign restorative practice coordinators or mentors, and we create a teacher learning communities. And learning communities is one of the things, and I believe that you have learning communities. And if you don't have learning communities in your space where you are, that's something administrators and school leaders, that's something we really want to take a good look at. Learning communities where teachers can have the vertical and horizontal articulations around their respective subject area so that they can have common assessments, and common rubrics, and they can share their best practices with one another. That is done in that setting. But instead of discussing math, English, and science, we have a learning community around restorative practice where they can hone these skills, where they can get special training. And then keep the training going, send them out and training, bring in experts to come and train them, train the trainer model that I talked about earlier. So this is really continued staff support. We cannot accomplish this or any other development without staff support. We have to support the staff and we have to provide the resources. And this is one area in which we can support the staff. Then we come to the measure to where we measure the impact. I think that whatever we do, and that's one of the areas in education which I think we fall down on, being a career educator and worked in so many areas. I realize that we come to the table with so many initiatives and we don't give them time. We don't give them enough time to even germinate, time to grow, time to take effect, because change in education doesn't occur overnight. You introduce a new curriculum, a new method, give it a few years. Don't just change it because it mightn't work right away. So we have to measure growth. We have to measure improvement, but we have to give it time. And these are the kinds of changes that require time. So we track the metrics. We look at the referrals. How many students had fights? How many students went on suspension? Remember, we did the baseline. Remember, I talked about that earlier, and we did the baseline. And now what we're going to be doing is to see if there's an improvement. Because if there's not significant improvement, then we have to go back to the drawing board to see what we can do differently. So we have to keep meticulous records on all of this. Then we have to use surveys and focus group and talk about these things. We know that sometimes a part of our culture and education is that we go into our rooms and we shut the door and we do what we have to do. But sometimes we need to get out of that classroom and we need to come together, because you might be doing something that's working so well for you, and the teacher next door is struggling with that concept, how to deliver. And just by you meeting with that staff members, you meeting that group, how to teach this mathematical concept, you change the other teacher for the betterment. All right. So you do the surveys, you do the focus group, and then you compare your growth with the baseline data. The school that I referred to in my previous presentation, they were able to reduce infractions by over 80% after a year. It was surreal, but it worked because the students were given the opportunity to talk about what they were dealing with. So you look at the matrix, you track the matrix, you use the surveys, you use the focus groups, and you compare that with your baseline data. And then you use data-driven decisions. We talk about data-driven instruction, right? But now we talk about data-driven decisions, and that will inform our approach, inform our strategies, and then we make adjustments as we go along. So nothing happens in one day, and you might try this and then it mightn't work immediately, because students have to get adjusted too. Students realize they're not going to be punished for something as in the traditional punishment, then they might want to test the waters. But sooner or later, they will realize that you're not off the hook, because when we send you during a lunch break, we send you to that room where you learn life skills instead of having lunch with the other students. We don't see it as a punishment. We see it as something to enhance your growth and your development. But you realize that, hey, I'm not getting off. I'm going to be sitting down and we're going to be having a conversation while everybody is on the outside playing. Then they will, sooner or later, they'll get used to and realize it's not something that they can just take for granted. And then we go to our phase 5, our 5th phase. And when I'm finished, I don't want us to be talking. I want to have questions so we can answer the questions and we can have your involvement. I just want to go through this and I'll soon be done with this aspect. So if you have your questions, make sure you put them in the chat and then we can have that conversation. I'll soon be done with this, okay? But I'm excited. As I said at the outset, I am so hoping that we can institute restorative practices across the region. I was working on an organization, and we introduced it to a school in Jamaica. And when we got there, we learned that it was at the embryonic stage. They were actually looking at it systemically. So that is a good thing. So we look at the institutionalization of restorative justice. So it should be embedded in the culture and the policy. So we're talking about systems change now. You talk about your Department of Education is involved, and they build policies that will, and they fund the initiative, not just have the policies, make sure the funds are provided. All right. So what should happen at this stage after you have your pilot program? Because you don't necessarily want to go in and change a whole school initially. You have your pilot program. Once it works, then you start looking at your discipline policies, and adjust them to accommodate restorative practices. And you then add restorative practices to your mission and vision statements, because now we're talking about systemic now. And then you celebrate the success stories. Celebration is so very important in every aspect of education. I do understand that we have to do our tests, and we have to have the evaluation. But as leaders, I know I'm speaking to amazing educational leaders here. Celebrating your staff is a good practice when something good is done, and that should become a part of our system. And celebrating restorative practices, success stories should also be a part of it. So it becomes a part of the school's identity. It becomes a part of the school's identity. And then it should be scalable. We talk about starting with a pilot program. We do something and we have enough information and we have enough expertise that we can now scale it to incorporate the entire school. And then you expand it beyond your classroom and your individual classroom, and make it a part of the entire school. And also among the staff, because sometimes it is a fact that as adults, sometimes our environment can also be toxic among staff members. So restorative practice is not just for students, it's also for staff. We can also employ this strategy for staff members. And then we train new staff. It was successful if you do it at the grade level, whatever, then you train the staff at the next grade level. And then, as I said earlier, you engage your parents, you engage your community, and you just have involved in news media. Hey, we were able to reduce suspensions, we're able to reduce fights, etc., by such and such a percent. And it's only when you take this systemic approach and systematic approach that you make sure it's a sustainable, and make sure that it is adopted across the entire school. So this is what it would look like over a 12-month period. First 3 months, we deal with awareness and preparation. The next 4 to 6 months, we deal with training and orientation. This is where we're bringing the experts, and we identify the team leaders and the monitors, or whatever term we want to call it. And then we have the initial implementation. We do that. We make it a big celebration. By then, all the students will be aware of it, even if they're not involved in the pilot program, but they know what we're talking about. And then month 10 to month 12, we deal with monitoring and institutionalization of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I wanted to share with you at this stage. As I said to you, ESI has an exhaustive curriculum on restorative practices. And we can actually, if you want us to basically meet in a smaller setting, like your school or your whatever would like for us to, or a group of schools or a country for you're from would like to us to go into deeper depth, we can also do that. But we want to just introduce or jog your memory, or to enhance what you're doing, that restorative justice, restorative practice, that's the way to go to enhance what we're doing in the Caribbean and around the world. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Gordon,
Yes,
let's
sir.
see now. Question. One question was from, I think, Marsha, I think. Forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong or forgot it. But the question was, what do you do with students who are disruptive, but they are gifted or they're bright, but they're disruptive in the class? So what do you do? Some strategies.
Okay. A part of um, a part of multi-tiered support services involves creating a gifted and talented initiative in your school. Uh, because I know we do differentiated instruction, and sometimes you might not, and we do centers, etc. But sometimes the it might not be conducive to setting up centers where you can, students at different levels, and you teach them at different levels, and you move around the centers, etc. So that would be a great way to do it. But a more systemic approach would be to have a gifted and talented initiative so that these students could be pulled out at certain times, because most times when students are disruptive is because they're either bored or they are not understanding what is happening. So that would be my suggestion. If you can, I'm going to say this for last, if you can find like extra work or give the students some kind of responsibility to work alongside you, then I think those are little strategies, but they could work. But I think more so, every school should have a GNT program where you can pull students out and have them, you know.
Yeah. Do you think it is useful, since we're at the beginning of the year, to involve students in like the rules making of the school and give them a nice fancy name like our classroom conduct, um, our guidelines for this classroom or school, instead of the teacher making the rules and telling the students to follow these rules. These are the rules we're going to follow for this year.
Classroom rules should not be designed by teachers. It should be a collaborative activity involving our students. And you and I know that you can go into a meeting and you know what the outcome is going to be, but you can orchestrate it in such a way so that the participants own it. We all do that. Leaders, we do that, right? But you can frame your conversation in a manner that they take ownership. But yeah, this is one of the things that we teachers are supposed to involve with students in setting the rules. And that gives you a better handle so that when you're enforcing it, you can use the language. Now, this is your rule. And you put this in place. So yes, that's a best practice. And here's the other thing, as we say that. When I started in education in Patterson, New Jersey, one of the things they said to me, don't smile for the first few days. That's the worst. That's the worst instruction you can give to anybody. Don't smile. And, so I would go in the classroom. I would say, these are my rules and whatever. This right from day one, the students will be disruptive because they're going to challenge you. You try to build a relationship with your students and let them own it.
I agree with that. I used to laugh with them all the time from day one. And when they know that you're serious, you're very
Yes,
serious. So it's very strategic.
right.
Very good. All right. Another question is pertaining to collaboration. When you realize you have students that are off their rockers, so to speak, and you have colleagues around who might be having similar problems or maybe not similar problems with students, how do you go about collaborating around setting up restorative practices in your school or your classroom?
Um, I, I would think that okay, not a systemic approach, like that I just mentioned it. There is studies have been done on advisor advisee, the advisor advisee concept, where it is said that if one student is connected with an adult and touch bases with that adult several times a week, or at least once a day. It doesn't have to be a long time, but hi, I'm in charge of the student. I think what the teacher could do is to find someone that the student might have some regard for, maybe the coach or another teacher, and you have a conversation. You meet with the teacher, and you have a conversation with the student and the teacher, and ask this teacher to be that advisor, advisee, to touch base with students. How are you doing? That's one thing. Also, you collaborate with the parents, and you have this, trying to remember what we call it in our school district, but there is an agreement, a report that the student would take home to the parent every day. And that parent, I know that we have some parents who will not cooperate, but I'm looking at normal situation. Involve the parent and let the student check all those boxes every day. And if the student starts checking off the behavioral box every day, then you cut it down, you check it off once a week, and they bring it back, because sometimes you have to involve the parents. What we have here in New Jersey, we have response to intervention. Response to intervention is called INRS, intervention and referral services, where if a student has academic or behavioral problems, etc., you would come together as a team involving the parents, and the parents may even involve their pastor or whomever, the leader of the mosque, and they come together and meet with the student in a setting, because sometimes when the student sees that so many adults are on the team working with them, then we can effect change.
Yeah. Simone says a contract agreement with checklist. I think that's very good. That's very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And involve the parent.
Yeah. All right. So there's a question from Carlene. Carlene Morris Dawkins asks, what suggestions would you give to a teacher regarding restorative practices with autistic students in regular classrooms? And I'm going to rephrase that to say that the practices with students with autism in regular classrooms.
Okay, I think the teacher, and I'm hoping, I don't know where we're going with this in the Caribbean, because I know that what we have, and it's effective here in the United States, we have special education departments where we have a team of people who are trained, or specialists who are trained in the various areas, where the ADHD or whatever the case might be, and they come together, and the student is identified with special needs, and they provide strategies to assist the teacher. If you don't have that, then I think that some provision needs to be made to at least provide you with some strategies that you can use. For instance, there are students who cannot sit still. They will be on the chair, they will be under the chair. And of course, I'd rather have a classroom where all my students are sitting down, but you have to understand that you have to sort of sensitize the students, all the students in the classroom, that, hey, we have a situation here. You don't have to tell them what the diagnosis is, but you allow the student, because if the student sits still, all the mental energy is taken up, it's sitting down, they can't concentrate on anything else. So you give them one of those softball, or something, a little box, or maybe they want to come with their little pillow, or whatever the case might be, and let them do that. And you take that approach to give them some grace, and they might be a little disruptive. There are students who have to shake the chair, get used to it, and we more so as educators have to make that adjustment and understand that this is normal for this child, although it's not normal for us.
I am very glad you mentioned that, because the students really some of them need something to touch. They need something to fidget. So I usually have fidget toys and those little what they call those stress balls, the stress balls, so that they can squeeze on it. There's some questions, Dr. Gordon, that I want to rush through quickly. One of them is early childhood. Let me see, early childhood. They ask, what strategies do you have for early childhood teachers with students who are disruptive in early childhood classrooms?
uh, we ride this so much with the whole play therapy thing, but I think that we have to sort of understand what makes the child. It sort of sound lay here, but makes the child tick. What interests this child? If this child likes to draw, if this child might not be able to fall, because in the old time days, it was one classroom, the little red classroom, and children were there at different levels. And then you have to use differentiated instruction to teach it. I know I'm trying to say something that's very hard on teachers. So what else can I do? I've used up all my resources. I have 45 students in this class. I cannot give this one child all this attention. But find what interest a child has. A child might want to, might want a picture book. The child might want some clay. The child might, whatever appeals to this child. You use that. Whatever resource you can find. Talk to the parent and ask what does this child like to do at home, and what does this child like to play with, and then you use the play therapy, and you use whatever you can to, because you can't save the world. My superintendent said to me some time ago, Noel, you can't save the world because you cannot afford to spend all your time with that one student. So you have to just find something that works, and then you offer. I don't know if you guys offer tutorials. There might be a tutorial time when you can sit with students on a one-on-one basis, and you may teach them differently. You see, the disadvantage that we have in some of our countries is that in the States here, the students' IEP says they have to have a one-on-one. So that means one paraprofessional has to sit with 2 or 3 students for the duration of the classroom, and you don't have that. Don't beat up yourself too much. If you can't get through 100%, try to find something that works. And I wish I could have given you a better answer, but I'm just trying to be practical here.
Yeah, the practicality really works. That's true. The other one is one other question, the gamified classrooms. How can we incorporate restorative practices in the gamified classrooms, or how do we create gamified classrooms with restorative practices involved?
I'm not an expert on the gamified classroom. Ask the person to break that down a little bit more for me.
All right, so my understanding, gamified is where they use some, I think mostly in the early childhood classrooms and lower level, grade level, like up to 3rd or 4th grade or so, 3rd grade. They normally incorporate games in the regular instructional experience of the students so that they can maybe get on an app and play games to learn math. If they're doing fractions, they play a game to strengthen their skills in learning fractions, for example. Or if they're reading, they play games around like strategies for comprehension and reading strategies or something of the sort like that. So it's like in a game type of way, mostly that the students are engaged in the classroom.
I have some video clips that I didn't incorporate it in this session on restorative practices. They are actually games that are geared towards restorative practices and storytelling and conflicts, and then they ask questions. What would you do? What's right? So you're teaching them restorative practices, and they're seeing it as learning to communicate, and some of these involve higher order questions also. What would you do, and why would you do it, etc. So it's a matter of finding the resources and incorporate it into the lesson.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that really works, and knowing knowing the students who are in front of you. What I used to do to add to your restorative practices framework is do a survey to find out the personality type of the student. So there are some kids' personality type surveys at the end, at the beginning of the school year, and but from that you get to know who is sitting in front of you, rather than trying to figure out who they are throughout the year. And by the end of the year, you realize that, oh, that's what let little Johnny ticked. If I had known this at the beginning of the year or in the middle, then I would have treated him differently. But now I know I'm going to tell the other teacher that he's moving on to. And he never had a good experience with me. If I had known him, and help him develop his personality type. For example, some students procrastinate a whole lot on homework, and some of them basically needs attention in the classroom. So if you do a personality type testing on students, or just sit with them for a little bit and get to know them, then you'll know that they procrastinate or they like attention. So you have lunch with them once in a while, just to get the jitters out, to let them have one-on-one attention with you. And that will help to kind of curb their behavior in the classroom somewhat. Where this is general speaking, because you might have to implement some other strategies. Dr. Gardner, yes. What's next? What were you gonna share?
Okay, I was going to say, when I started my teaching career at school five, I remember school five in Patch, New Jersey, I was covering an inclusion class. The classroom had this one young man. He was always very disruptive, and I was hard on him. And I was like, my early days, disciplining you, and we'd always get into conflicts, and he would be disruptive. And there was a special education teacher who would teach him when I'm not there. And she called me and she said, "This young man cannot read." I never had a clue that he couldn't read. So what he did, he created that smoke screen around himself to hide the fact that he couldn't read. The day I found out that this young man had reading issues, I started giving him some special attention. We ended up had an excellent relationship, and the disciplinary problems stopped. So just to endorse what you just said about learning who your students are. And teachers, I know it's not easy, because especially when you have so many students in your classroom, it's very difficult to do. You can just do the best you can and advocate for special education services to come to your school in a more meaningful way. All right?
Yeah. Yeah, so let me go over something here. There's somebody on YouTube, Rebecca, asked if it's ethical for a teacher to do personality tests. Those soft personality test is not psychological test. The personality test that we normally would do for students, it's online testing. It's open to everybody. Anybody can do it, and it's the soft one where you get to understand very basically the personality types in general of students, and there are some for adults as well. So you have students from about age 7 or 8 to about 14, and that's a personality type test for students at that age. And then you have from 14 to about 16 or 18 or 19, and that's a personality test for adolescents. And these are free tests that anybody can administer, that is associated, relatively speaking, professionals who are in charge of students and who are in charge of their learning, that they can get to administer sufficient and quality learning, meeting the students' learning style and the personality type, and teaching style you can turn into the more effective way of approaching students. When I did that, every single year I've done personality testing and get to sit with my students and talk to them, they learn more than the years before when I've never done it with them, because I get to understand Michelle and little Johnny, and I get to talk to them more about what they like and what they don't like. I will not bring it up with them for the most part, but sometimes you engage them with challenging things. So you'll get to understand what caused them to tick. It's not unethical. It's actually very good and useful for people who are in education, to make sure that you you meet the needs of students? So that's a very good question, Rebecca. So really good question. All right. So if we do not have any more questions, I want to ask Dr. Gordon to give a closing. And then while he's talking about the strategies or summary, I will drop the link in the chat to complete the survey. I will drop it also in YouTube to complete the survey now. And you complete the survey and give it about 24 hours for you to get your certificate in your email. It's an e-certificate in your email. It's very important that you complete the survey by tomorrow morning at 8 p.m., 8 a.m. Eastern time. That is 7 a.m. Jamaica time. It's very important that you complete it because we're going to shut it down within that time. So by that time, for security reasons, okay? It's very important that those of us who are on here, whether you're on Zoom or on YouTube, you complete it now, between now and tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Jamaica time or 8 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. So Dr. Gordon, one other thing before I switch over back to you. It's if you haven't subscribed yet, guys, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And those of us who are on Zoom, you can pull it up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also subscribe to our website, edusolutionsintl.org, edusolutionsintl.org, and you can become a part of our mailing list. Also, there's a men's conference. It's a regional men in education conference. If you go on our website at edusolutionsintl.org, you will see the flyer on there. It's coming up in St. Vincent from the 19th to the 21st of November of this year. It's the very first in its kind. It's Men in Education Conference. And I know that there are more women on here than males because we are getting fewer and fewer in education. Support somebody, a male, to come to the conference, or a woman can attend as well, in solidarity with the men. So that is coming up. Look on our website for it. And so, Dr. Gordon, can you summarize your workshop, the restorative practices in your classroom this evening?
Okay, just before I summarize, it would be very interesting if you could know the various countries from where these participants. Can they drop it in the chat to
Oh,
tell you
yeah,
which?
sure.
Please drop it in the chat to tell you which country you're tuned in from. That would be interesting. Okay,
Yes.
so to summarize, this is something that I'm passionate about. I'm really passionate about this because I remember as I grew up, I've been around for a long time, you know. Said a dog my age is no pup. In fact, he's dead long ago because I'm retired. I just retired in June. June from, public education. But what I noticed over the years is that we're having more and more disciplinary problems and different kinds of disciplinary problems. Our students have access to so much. And because of that, it's affecting them in so many ways. We're having more children. Listen, I was serving in one school, and the suicidal ideation. Students wanted to kill themselves. Students wanted to cut themselves. Students having esteem issues, and the problems go on and on. I remember this young man. I used to counsel him myself because you can see some of these students that if nothing is done, then they're heading for the cliff. And I remember this young man. It was in the elementary school, and I wasn't supposed to counsel students. I was directing a department with counselors. And I took on the responsibility, and I started counseling this young man because I knew that he had issues. And then I lost track of him. And years after, I spoke to the middle school principal and said, "Is this young man, has he ever passed through your school?" And he said, "Yes, but he was locked up." And then a few years after that, he went to another state and he was killed. He got himself in the wrong crowd. Now, and it pains my heart because I saw something coming down the pike. I just wasn't able to sort of have that hands-on throughout all these years because I had so many other responsibilities. If we can take the systemic approach in grabbing a hold of these students, because these are the ones who are going to go out into society. They may jack your car, they may steal your stuff, whatever. We need to grab a hold of them. And I believe the best way to grab a hold of these students and to help them is if we revisit our approach to discipline. Because punitive measures involving punishment, etc., is a win-lose situation. We're not saying that there's not going to be a consequence. Yes, responsibility. But if we could engage them cognitively, get them involved with the critical thinking skills, and that they're able to say, yes, I could have taken another approach. And if you're taking another approach, what do you think the outcome would be? How do you think this student is feeling because you said the wrong word to him, or because you hit him, or whatever the case might be, and have them talk through the situation? I think we'll have a better tomorrow. And we might not reap the benefits, but your children will, and your grandchildren will, and we'll have a better society. So we're hoping at ESI, we're hoping that very soon that restorative practices, restorative justice will be the buzzword all over the Caribbean. And we're hoping that we're able to come and just take a look and say, hey guys, you got it. Thank you so much for your time. And I realized that everybody stayed. We held at 300, nobody left. You only have a presentation, nobody stays. So we thank you for staying. And we're hoping that we can have a follow-up. And as I said, reach out to Dr. Dice if you want to dig a little deeper with restorative practices. Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Gordon, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Guys, please, if you want to, as Dr. Noel Gordon said, reach out with school-based. If you want to reach out, write to us at edusolutionsintl@gmail.com. Write to us with your request at edusolutionsintl@gmail.com, and we can talk. Okay, with school-based, we have tons of resources that we can share with the schools. Just write to us, and then we can set up a meeting and talk. Make sure you fill out the survey. The link, I'm going to drop it again in the chat. Fill out the survey so that you can get your certificates. Fill. And for those of us on YouTube, I'm going to close down YouTube now. Wish you all the best. Take care and reach out to us if you need anything at edusolutionsintl@gmail.com. Okay. Have a great afternoon, everybody. We'll talk soon. All right. Let's go on. Ababa Holmes, write to us face to face or online, it doesn't matter. Just write to us at edusolutionsintl@gmail.com. And we can talk some more about that. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a YouTube channel that we drop in the chat. Subscribe. You can watch Edu Talk on there as well every week on Tuesdays, or you can actually watch it anytime. It doesn't have to wait until Tuesday. We have tons of episodes on there you can watch. You can also take in some of our other services on our website. So check those out and reach out to us. There is also tutoring for students coming up too. We're launching that. It's a student academy that is coming up in October, early October on our website. So check that out when it's coming up, or you can reach out to us for some of the services before they go live. All right, everybody, take care. Dr. Garden, big up yourself.
Yes,
Fellow
sir.
Jamaican in the house. Yes, always a pleasure, brother.
Yeah, I'm from Jamaica, man. I'm a Jamaican.
Big up yourself, Dr. Garden. All right, later. Take care.